Nichole, thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored.
Oh gosh, thanks for having me. I
Yeah,
love these little chit chats.
I
They're
know.
so good.
We started to get into it, and I was like, no, 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 let's press the record
Yeah,
button.
right.
Um, One of the first things, like you've been practicing for almost 30 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's you got some experience. And so
I do.
one of the things that I'll ask my seasoned practitioners and colleagues is like, hey, what are you seeing now that you didn't see 10 years ago, 20 years ago? What has been the evolution in what you're seeing? And if you want to, I don't know if there's an evolution in the cases that you're seeing, meaning you said you were a doula for 20 years, or you see a lot of
hmm
kiddos versus family. If you can expand on that, that would be great.
Well, my muscle testing practice that I've been in for 15 years at this point is, specifically full-time muscle testing. Um, Really was born out of my doula practice. I was a cranial sacral therapist, birth and postpartum doula, childbirth educator. Um, and I just remember thinking, uh, late 2000, it was like 2008, 2009. I was like, gosh, if there's just one little nugget of information that's very specific to you and you and you, that could just like, I just knew it would kind of crack the case because the whole standard going gluten and dairy free wasn't doing the trick from a health coaching perspective, and looking at things more holistically. It was like, I knew there was something deeper behind it. So it's kind of crazy the things that we do that all the time, right? We're like hindsight's 2020 with our own kids, and right, you just
Yep.
are like, if there's so many times I'm thinking, even the doula babies in the first 10 years, I was like, oh, can we go do that over again? Because wow, just there's like
Yep.
wisdom and I know it is kind of interesting. In the last year, we've got this little goddess mama text thread that I'm in, and it's this space where I can come to and be like, you guys, I just had a thought. Like, do you want to, do you want to know what just landed? And really what's landed in the last year and a half is this reality of, oh, guess what? I'm a wise elder. And I'm only 48, and so it doesn't feel like I have the clout to say that. And yet, if I just what happened was this, I just realized like the sooner I can just accept who I came into this world being, life just would be easier. And that
Mhm.
was just like the big yesterday years old, right? When I really recognized what I came in here to do, what I'm capable of, what I've been armed with, the things that I have seen, we all have our own stories. And so the the wisdom I think is like the piece that's kept, it's the little
Mhm.
thread, right? That's pulled all the way through. So you actually just kind of like made my skin crawl a little bit when you were like, what's different now than, in my first 20 years of practice. So in my last 10 years of being a doula, I had started into the muscle testing um, arena. Few years had worked in a functional medicine clinic. So just kind of got to see a variety um, of scenarios. I was sharing space with my homeopath for a while in her beautiful office that she eventually had to dedicate one whole day per week to being a vaccine injury clinic
Mm.
because of vaccine injury. And so the the things that are different is there's more of that. And there are, like in a scenario I had this morning in a discovery call with a family member of several family members that I work with around a 20-week gestation ultrasound, came up with a significant heart issue with the baby. And the baby should live, but we'll have, there will be some implications and a few surgeries
Surgeries,
in the
scary
first, yeah, scary
surgeries.
stuff. Like for gosh, just so scary. And she just was like, I had home births. Like that's not how I was going to do things. And now things are so far opposite. And it's like, it's so hard to make that right in your mind. And she said, what do you think? And what are you going to test for? It's like, well, I'll test for everything that I always test for. And I just had this feeling of just, inside of what's happened in the last 4 to 5 years at this point, there have been such ongoing detrimental effects to exposure that is real and it does show up and we do see it every day. Um, just the other day, I happened to share some post on social media that was something about, the correlation between like Hep B and autism. Um, and my kind of favorite conversation as a Bradley instructor when we got to the night where we were talking about the big decisions, right, was here are just some things you just want to keep in mind when you are looking at some of the support you may or may not need for your baby. So your baby was just born. Has your baby had time to do drugs or be sexually active, right? And like the like deer in the headlights slash laughter that you get at the same time from parents, they're like, well, what do you mean? Well, that would only be certain, injections would only be needed if your baby were sexually active or, right, or using drugs. And they're just like, you got to be kidding me, right? So
Yep.
just like the basics, right? Some of this basic information just isn't shared. So I had shared a social media post and I immediately, got someone from high school was chiming in about, you can't,
Yes.
this isn't a thing or something. And I just simply posted like, I see it every day, so it's a thing. And then I
Hmm.
got like a PhD high school sibling scenario like chimed in and correlation doesn't equal causation and and it's like, is that a fight even worth? It's so frustrating. It's so
Yep.
frustrating when you can see what they can't see. And it doesn't mean that every case of autism was because of a Hep B shot. That's not what we're saying either. This is bio-individualized care. And so we get to see what other people can't see. And so social media, I literally just have to ask myself, I don't have time. I do not have time to answer
I do not have
or
time.
do
You have
not
to
have
put
time to
boundaries.
time
I
in.
mean, so what it
So
sounds like is
hard.
you're seeing a lot more complexity, you're seeing a lot
Yeah.
more illness at a younger age and a lot more complications. And I do, and I mean, I'm seeing that as well. Now I've been practicing for 10 years, but I only have a 10-year window instead of a 30-year window.
Hmm.
And, I'm focusing on fertility. And so now when I have clients who are, well, so and so got pregnant and they didn't have any issues, and I'm so frustrated. Now, I don't have clients who are coming to me with that. They for sure feel the frustration if they see their neighbor or whoever just like getting pregnant without any issues.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't know anything about that pregnancy, you don't know anything about that birth, or the people that are on the front lines, which are us, the holistic practitioners, we're the ones that are seeing that damage more and more, right? Like when you hear about little girls getting their periods at 6 years old,
Oh yeah.
that's not right,
Yeah.
and it's like nobody's seen that. And by the time the research or the PhD, I'm so careful about listening to anybody who doesn't have clinical experience, because at
Hmm.
the end of the day, if you're not sitting in front of patients and you're not seeing what actually is going on for people, you're just
Hmm.
research. It's like, well, the research is studying the body. It's
Yeah.
trying to keep up with the body. The
Yeah.
body is telling us what's
Yeah.
going on. And I think everybody that I've had in the holistic space is very alarmed about what we are seeing in practice. And we're not saying that to scare people, but to
Mm-mm.
genuinely say, like, hey, if we don't do something about this, if we don't turn this
Hmm.
around,
Hmm.
things are not looking good.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've seen vaccine injury in our own in not with my children, but in my immediate family, and
Yep.
that is just devastating to acknowledge, it's crazy to see precocious puberty, yeah, at 6 or 7, not things that we saw in the past. And, we closed the doors on our physical practice. It'll be 3 years ago this coming November. So when was that? Now I'm having to math this in my head and my brain doesn't want to compute. 2020 to 20, what, two?
Yep.
Yeah. So just even in those 2 years, I saw more like recurring miscarriage than I did in 20 years. I saw one still in 20 years, but
Yep.
and yeah, clients had, especially like recurring clients, right? I mean, you'll okay, so oh, this one we miscarried and we're at it again kind of thing. But there is an interesting, I will say, correlation to those who happen to be in a more medical environment. It does seem to, those numbers seem higher. And I just say seem, I'm not sitting there tallying them and keeping track. But if I were to stand back and look at who those individuals were, even if they didn't
Mm.
intentionally, make a decision that could do irreparable harm, that you just like, you can't make up that. I always say it's the company you keep. Like it's that environment that you're in. So when I'm inquiring about what you do for a living, I just did a video the other day on this. It's like, I'm not trying to be nosy. I am trying to understand where do you insert yourself every day, 5 days a week? Where do you spend 70% of your
Sure.
time? Those are going to be big indicators, right? To how full is that toxin bucket and what toxins, are in there and
And even your
what is
capacity
that?
to change, right?
Oh
Your
yeah.
capacity to change. So like if you work at a bar and all your friends drink and you're trying not to drink, it's like, wow, you're just not, the odds of you succeeding in that are very low.
Hmm. Yeah, that's and it's here's the other thing that's interesting is to have gone from, being a birth doula to walking that very much, educational, nutritional, informational,
Mhm.
physical, emotional, like here are the stages and the phases, and here's how you're going to be supported, and here's how we're training your partner to come in and be that support for you. To, the first years of full-time muscle testing, which were definitely more nutritionally minded, and then enter all this beautiful work with Cellcore, right? And just this eye on like, wait, hold up. Deficient, toxicity creates deficiency. It's just like on one hand, like duh, but also, and so
Oh, huge
the
light bulbs. Yeah.
oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So kind of going back, this is where I'm like, oh, could we go back to the first 10 years and kind of rework some of these? Because we did have, very low rates, but, transfers from home birth or transfers from birth center settings, but those were actual life-threatening, non-birth related, right? Baby comes beautiful and over the next day or two, not nursing so well, or perhaps not breathing so well, and, then transfer. And there were some more significant diagnoses. I don't know, all to say it's like, first we were heavy on nutrition and then it was like, let's get detoxed and let's clean up. And then I'm thinking more and more lately about just insulin resistance and how that played, you just think that's not what I was thinking when we were running into preeclampsia and wasn't even making the connection when we could reverse that by having mom eat 54 eggs in 2 days. Yes, it's a thing. Like, yes, that can be done. She doesn't want to see an egg for the next 4 years of her life, but like it's a thing and it does reverse it. It's phenomenal. I would say supervised, right? Just don't go whole hog on that. But um, just what insulin resistance is kind of at the bottom of, and how many times I see on our assessment form blood glucose being a problem, or people saying like, "Oh, I just think I have low blood sugar," or these little symptoms happen every once in a while, and even their food journals look pretty good, and yet they
Yeah.
have,
Do you put a CGM on them?
high fasting glucose. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
That's
If
the
things aren't
quickest way
like,
to find out.
yeah, if things aren't adding up, and people are even like, well, I think it's my coffee, and then they take coffee out, and that's not it. It can be the times of day that they say if they're intermittent fasting, and maybe they need to flip the way they fast because
Yes.
just of their constitution, right? So I just think the benefit that there is to this bio individualized care. A, how do we continue to show up so people know we're out here doing this work, right?
Hmm.
So people know to ask deeper questions. They know to wade through kind of the
Yep.
world of providers, and they know that when they're in the clinic, this isn't just the only way they have to do things. They can kind of ride the fence, if you will. It's kind of what I call it. They're working a little bit on both sides, but I tend to see those folks are feel pretty grounded because their fear, if you will, is sort of managed by like, I have a foot over here in allopathic care, and which allows me to have this foot over here. And then you have people who are like, well, if I'm 3/4 over here, we can tap into allopathic care as needed for emergency care, urgency care, things like that. Um, I don't
And
know.
there's
I
some
just
still good docs. It's
totally.
just you have to have the knowledge and to be able to wean the information out because that's, like when you go to the doctor and when I go to the doctor, we get very different information when somebody who doesn't
Hmm.
have our knowledge,
Hmm.
when my
Hmm.
doc is like, yeah, you should take this. And I'm like, sure. And then I walk away being like, I'm not taking that because I
No.
know X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z. No, but like,
Right.
can I get this blood work? Can I do this? And versus somebody who doesn't have any knowledge or background. They'll just say, oh yeah, like my doctor just told me to do that and I'm going to do that. And then
Mhm.
it's like, how crazy is it to trust someone that you see once a year, maybe for 15 minutes?
Mhm.
Like, how much do they actually know about you to be able to
Mhm.
tell you? And the implications that we see on the things that they prescribe are so much greater than a supplement. Do you know?
Mhm.
Like, I remember
Mhm.
Todd during my muscle testing, and I want to ask you about, because there's a lot of people who have no idea what muscle testing is, but I
Right.
just remember Todd being like, you're scared to give somebody nutrients when they go to the doctor and they can get prescribed medication that literally will kill them faster. Like, let's take a statin, for example, literally
Mhm.
will kill them faster than, oh, but what if they're reacting to the supplement or a
I know.
contraindication? And you're like,
Drives me crazy.
that's crazy. We can't, it's
Mhm.
like saying, well, I can't eat carrots because it's high glycemic, but then you're going over and picking up a Skittles
Yeah.
bar because whatever, it's like,
Right.
oh, like, but there's a big difference between the energy of the food and what you're trying to
Mhm.
do. And anyways, tell
The
me
end
muscle
goal.
testing for those of us who don't have no idea. And I know you teach it. Why did you switch into muscle testing? What is it? I think there's a lot of people who have just no idea what it is and the power of
Well,
it.
yeah, so muscle testing is best described as it's a non-invasive way of analyzing organs, glands, and tissue of the body for imbalance. It's very simple. And we can use things like modalities and supplementation, various lifestyle recommendations to bring that back into balance. Secondly, a lot are familiar with what's considered the lock and the unlock of the arm that happens in an in-person practice. Muscle testing can be done virtually and remotely. Been doing it for a lot of years. Like I said, full time here. We closed our bricks and mortar practice because by 2021, my practice was already 75% virtual within the confines of my
A
physical
clinic, yeah.
practice. Yeah, and so I was like, what am I doing? And that might look different. I'm not holding my arms up like this all day for my clients to see that I'm using various ways of muscle testing. These are just hand modes. And in that regard, you're more asking questions. Whereas if you are working with a person in person, you're using vials, and the vial is kind of the question itself, right? The vial is the stimuli, either a negative impact or a positive impact. And it's interesting how I came to it because this is how I can say that I've been muscle testing for 29 years. I was 20 years old and well, 28 years. I was 20 years old and I took at the time the most comprehensive bodywork and massage therapy program that there was here in the Twin Cities. I had gone to the U for a year and, pre-med, and I was like, this nutrition 101 is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm kind of over it. I don't actually know if what I want is what I want and what am I going to do? And so, I pulled all of my friends because they all know what I should do with my life at age 20. And they were like, well, we all love when you give us back rubs. And so I'm like, great, I'll become a massage therapist. So it
There
was
you
very
go.
much
That's
like
good.
I'm gonna bide some time is what I really needed to do. But what I didn't realize is that I was actually like charting a course to invent my own career, and which I actually think is magic. I just wasn't aware of it at the time. And what it allowed me to see was I also had wanted to be a midwife, and in searching midwifery, I found out about doula work. So this was kind of all landing at the same time. And I'd taken an elective course in my 18-month program, and it was muscle testing. And so here was a guy from Saskatchewan, and he was a great anatomy instructor. And he taught us the lock and the unlock and how to use it structurally to determine areas of priority. And so, though I knew the lock and unlock well, I would get bored of it because if I just stood at the end of the table and held, it's almost like checking leg lengths. I wasn't doing that, but I'm holding the heels in my hands. The whole body would light up like a little electric, funny, right? Like a little electric, right? A grid
Circuit, yeah.
pattern. And I would get these little X's and it'd be like, well, interesting, that's what tested, and like this what's tested. And so I stopped using the muscle test because I could feel it anyway. So that was what's kind of interesting about that. And then, fast forwarding into doing the doula work, postpartum doula, I did cranial sacral therapy for 12 years. And at this point, then I have two babies and I am running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And I'm also thinking like, it's great to have these income streams, but like this is so hard to manage and
Yep.
not rely on someone else to raise these kids. So that's when that inquiry of like, if I just knew one thing, like one little nugget of information about that baby and that toddler and that I'm clear, it just was, it's like when you put the key in the lock, you have no idea, but it's going to be amazing, right? You're just like, it's going to be more than where we are
It's a
now.
big unlock in the case.
Totally a big unlock. And so it cracked so many cases just being able to hone in on a specific food or a specific chemical or a specific metal. And then it just made me hungry for more. Well, wait, where's that metal coming from? Why would a fresh little 7-month-old baby have metals in their body? You know, they don't have cavities, they don't have fillings, they don't. And so just and also at the same time, I had already worked in a functional medicine environment where much to my dismay, I realized, and this is not throwing shade on functional medicine, I just thought it was different than what it was. And after working in that clinic, I realized it doesn't look much different than allopathic care. You're running labs and then you're taking this for this and that for that and that for that. And it's sort of hands off. This was
Yep.
my experience. And I see you again in a month or 6 weeks and no touch point in between and no real kind of coaching or hand holding for those first couple of years. And so that's where I kind of found like closet muscle testers, honest to goodness, who were standard process users, like in the back office of this functional medicine clinic. And I was like, what, like you're my people. I can already tell. Come out of the closet. What are you doing back
Yeah.
there? And so I was just, it lit that fire of curiosity in me because I was already sitting there with like, I just want to know one more thing because I think that's going to make the difference in where we go next. And again, that was a really big like going gluten free and dairy free or raw dairy. Like there was a really big movement at that time. And sure, it moved the needle for some people, but it didn't move the needle enough for most people, is what I'll say. So there was like a
And
benefit
it's a big
and
drastic change, right? If someone cuts out gluten and
huge,
dairy and then
totally
everything, and then it's like, I don't feel that much better. And you're like,
right.
I know.
It's
It
so
just goes back to
frustrating,
like medicine is individualized versus
right?
blanket statement.
So it was just kind of following that and continuously, honestly, just kind of cutting the ties on each of the things that I offered until, in the end, I was just muscle testing and doing doula work. So now my son is almost 10. I was 6 months pregnant with him when I was at my last birth with my 12-year-old in tow, because that's just how we rolled. And
Yep.
which I also loved. That was really incredible in its own ways. In fact, I had a dream last night that one of my current clients who has 2 kids had a baby, and she lives in Tennessee, and I was her doula. And I was like, this isn't working, but this is so fun and exciting. And I woke up like, okay, wow, that's funny.
Yeah. You're
But
processing
the
something
part
from
of
the
me,
past.
honestly, that just never dies because it's such a unique experience and you are so welcomed into the family unit right away. Just, it's such an intimate,
Sure.
you become family. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure.
How does the actual like energy component work though? I think there's a lot of it's like if I play devil's advocate to be like,
Mhm.
how does it work though? Do you know what I mean? Like, how does it positive, negative? How do you know when someone is struggling with something? Just by like looking at their vial, taking a vial, and you can see that's the component that I'd love to like clear up for people.
I was teaching in Seattle a couple weekends ago and we kind of touched on this exact topic. We had a pharmacist who is a year new to functional medicine and then new to muscle testing. And it's always fun to have one in the room that we can razz the whole day. Um, Thank you, Paul. You know who you are. And so the question came up, and I said, "Well, what happens when you walk into a room and you get a vibe, right?" And he's like, "Well, it's just like reading the energy of the room." Okay. So that's energetic, right? That's
Mhm.
palpable. Like you're almost like I could bottle that. It's so strong, right?
Mhm.
Also, I tell people, well, Jimmy's favorite is like, how is it that we can pick this thing up and do, and then we have, a new hairbrush on our front doorstep the next day from Amazon. Like there's all this background communication happening energetically that we do not
Mhm.
see, but we just 1,000% buy into it, right?
Mhm.
One of the examples I like to give is when you get on social media and there's some kind of such and such was in an accident or we experienced this natural disaster, this thing is going on, please send your prayers, your vibes, your hugs, whatever, roasted chicken and all the things. And we don't do that unless we believe that we're going to be on the receiving end of that. And so it's a little bit of like check yourself if you can communicate like that, but you can be like, actually, no, no energy work. No, like I don't believe in that. Okay, well, prayer is energy, right? There's just no difference. And so there's like negative stimuli and positive stimuli, right? So I always say, we come in kind of at zero, right? And a negative stimuli is going to make that system weak, the nervous system weak. And that's, it's visible, it's palpable, you feel it.
Yep.
And then you bring in the thing to kind of rectify that problem, and it brings strength back to that muscle. Now, it's not like the strength of how strong is that bicep. That's not what we're looking at. It's how strong is the response
Yep.
of like, or the reflex, to that stimuli. That's the way that I would explain it to people. And I do think it is kind of a, especially in person, it's such a like feel it to believe it because
Hmm.
you can't unsee it. You can't undo. You're like, what is that that just dropped my arm to the floor? Like, what was that? It brings about such curiosity. I always tell people, like, really just stand inside of like, be playful, like almost inner
Yep.
child, be very curious. Because if you are not, you're not in the right place either. Like, I don't want to work with you.
Hmm.
You got to remain
Well,
lighthearted. You got to like not take things super seriously, and you got to be curious. You got to want to lean in.
I do think energy medicine is something that we are becoming aware of more and more. And just understanding that we are just balls of energy walking around, and
Right.
there's people we attract and there's people that we repel. And it's like, why have you attracted the partner that you have? And why do you have the kids that you
Right.
have? Or why do you have the job that you have? Like something about. So I like Todd in his infinite wisdom when and this is where I'm like, does he know that that vial is going to like literally drop the room and he's just waiting versus, do you know what I mean? Like there was the
Yeah.
guy who was standing, he was doing
Yeah.
muscle testing on him and he had heavy metals and he had all this stuff and he's really toxic. And he picks up the mental emotional vial and like the whole room just goes quiet. And like the guy, you can tell he's having a hard time swallowing
Mm.
because you could see that it's like
Yeah.
this emotion is boom. And you're just like, what is that?
Mhm.
But now, as a practitioner, my question to you, because you train a lot of practitioners as well, my question to you is like, how much do you feel like what the person, the practitioner is going through is impacting what they test for? Because
Mm.
I find like if I'm not clear, and I know like energetically clear, but let's be honest, if viruses are like part of our DNA and like parasites and all, like, are we really ever clear? Do you
Mhm.
know? Then how much is that skewing my perception? And I know that there's a lot of practitioners out there who haven't figured out their health yet.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so how much is that changing what they're testing for
Mm.
because of their capacity to test? You
I
know?
mean, yeah, I think it's a valid question. I think it comes from, I think it's looking at neutrality and are people taking the time and energy to kind of to ground out and to because
Get
we talk
neutral?
about like what's your yeah like, what's your like dropping into your heart space, right? What's your rhythm, what's your routine? And some people, I mean, have a big thing and some don't do anything, and there's no real right or wrong. But Dr. Todd Watts said something that was just like a total Todd-ism that had me like right. And it's he just said something like it just decided at some point in time that it's not gonna like penetrate, it's not gonna like right.
Mhm.
And I was like, of
You,
course.
yeah, of
Like
course. I
that's
just made
just
a
the
decision that wasn't
just
going to
make a
bother me.
decision. I know. And it's like it's brilliant, It's so
Yeah.
brilliant and it's so freeing just to be like I'm not gonna just because I consider myself an empath doesn't mean I'm just like gonna be open season to everything around me.
Hmm.
And that's been really freeing. And then there are all kinds of cool energetic things that I've been taught and that I know to clear space or clear myself. I will say a lot of my rabbit holes, just a lot of things where I've had, an immense amount of light shed upon like I don't know, kind of theory, if you will, around muscle or like where to look or what to look for or why you're looking or questions to ask has come from my own health or running into the things I have with my kids and my loved ones, where you're just like going through the ringer because
Yep.
the people who used to get me out of a hole can't get me out of a hole anymore. You know, it doesn't happen anymore. But for a while that was happening and it was frustrating. And I found, you'll find this interesting, that it was those practitioners who were not interested in learning the cell core muscle testing technology. I mean, there's just a certain way that they've done what they do in alignment with that test kit is just gold. It allows fast flow, like everything is there. So rarely have to go outside of it. So when it comes to say our own health issues and having a bias and what we're looking for, it's like you always start here. Like start with that cell core test kit because that'll keep you busy. That's
Hmm.
honestly, if you can just set everything to the side. And it is one thing that I teach. Like, look, we all have our it's one of my favorite things actually about teaching a group of practitioners is I want to know who you are and what your background is because when you're asking me questions throughout the weekend and you're a naturopath versus an acupuncturist, it's coming from a different
Lens.
way. The more I know, the better I can, lean into that based on the experience I've had. And so, I'll just think about it from, those early bodywork years. My table was set up in such a way that I could see the parking lot. There was like a window right there. And so before I knew it, I was doing a gait assessment before they were even in the room. And I was like, wait, that's so unfair. But it was just observation, right? It was just like,
Yep.
oh, mental note. And so they would come in and I would do the thing. And so I trained myself really early on to whatever observations I gathered, I just kind of put them on the shelf and I did the thing that I do. And then I can grab the thing down from the shelf and like check or toss what's there. I don't, I just think that takes a large amount of intention and it is hard to be very intentional all the time. I
For sure.
will say that. But a lot of the rabbit holes we go down, they're great, but you got to know how to get out. Like you go down,
Well, is
but
it
you're
worth, the
like,
question that I ask myself is like, is it worth taking the client down that rabbit hole? Like, is that the thing that's really going to fix what the issue is? And like in the fertility space, I always have to filter it through time, where it's
yeah,
like, do I have time to go down this rabbit hole? And then the ethical questions of, well, if I don't deal down this rabbit hole, are we passing something down? But are we ever really perfect? Are we always passing
right.
something down? Well, absolutely. Because if we wait
Should.
until perfection, then nobody's
Hmm.
going to have any babies, you
Hmm.
know? And
Hmm.
that's the conversation that I have in my head all the time of like, where do I go down this rabbit hole? Is it worth it for them? Are they
Hmm.
capable of overcoming it?
What's their capacity?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's their capacity? Because it's
Yeah.
like we say and throw these things around like it's just parasite cleansing and this, but there's such an energetic shift that has to happen when a person is truly dealing with a pathogen that they've had for, let's face it, some of them since birth. Like I have a guy with full of fungus. It's like you've been full of fungus
Right.
for so long. You're
Hmm.
35 years old sitting in front of me. You don't even know what it's like to be without it. How can
Right.
I give him a taste of it?
Right.
A taste of
Hmm.
like not having fungus and here's some human cells, the
Yeah.
ones that are like, here's me.
This is helpful. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I
So,
know. I know. That is a good question. And I guess the question I get asked the most frequently is what are the questions you ask? And certainly there's like a small list of the ones that, like I can't even think of them off the top of my head that just come up pretty frequently that I probably ask in every, maybe not every single follow-up visit, but in every kind of say initial consult. Um, and here's the thing about question asking is I think the problem is that practitioners don't give themselves permission to listen in that way. So we're listening to this like word vomit coming our way about their condition, about their symptoms, and about their this and that. And we're making some observations. And inside of that, there are some little connections being made. And this is my theory, right? When the connections are being made is when our intuition is turning on and starting to filter what makes sense, what doesn't, and then however you access information in that way.
what's noise? What's
Right. It's
actually
coming in like how do we
reality?
know what to jot down and what to set aside? And that's the part that I love is I don't know what those questions are. I only know when I'm in the moment. Like I was reading the feedback survey from Seattle, and someone was like, "Oh, it's really great when it's just one of you because it's like really small and cozy and intimate. But then it's really helpful when there's two of you because one can be doing the testing while the other is explaining." Because I'm very guilty of, I just am in my like, you know, I'm just doggy paddling through the water in
Mm-hmm.
my own, I'm getting there.
Yep.
And, here's the deal is when we're doing those full demos, we cannot stop at every step to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, why we checked it, how come, all of that. We just have to do it. And so I know it's frustrating over there, but in the end, they just need to see like what a top-down initial consult is going to look like from the muscle testing side of it. And then we take and break down each step and go, at length with
Sure.
what you're asking and why you're asking that. And so there's a little bit of a shift in reality because you're not like megaphoning your initial consult to an audience.
I think as a practitioner, it's really hard to document everything that you're doing and your brain pattern because
Oh yeah.
the aha moments that you have, to
Mm-hmm.
me, it's like now I'm practicing to develop my intuition. And it sounds crazy, but it's like, well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
If I have
Mm-hmm.
you sitting in front of me, one of my mentors, she is 30 years in practice, and she's like, my clinical practice is very intuitive. I then go find research to support what I'm seeing in practice, but the body has the wisdom. So you have to look at the body. And I'm like, oh my God, because
Right.
I'm like you, someone walking by me and I'm going to look at, oh, they have this shoulder over here and this is, and they're carrying this. They
Mm-hmm.
probably have insulin resistance or this is thyroid or this is whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were trained to do that as practitioners,
Mm-hmm.
but we also were probably like that. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like we probably
Yes.
paid attention to those things, which is
Mm-hmm.
why we're in the positions that we are in.
Mm-hmm.
And I do find it is intuitive. So then it's how do we create trust with our intuition? And then how do we help our patients create that trust? Because I remember you saying that one of the Cellcore events, eco presentations about the moms that are coming in that are so anxious and why do we have all these vaccine injuries that they usually are going against what they believe, or maybe they have no idea what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, but they're like, well, somebody told me to. And so I'm just going to do it. And there's zero questioning about it.
Mm-hmm.
Where in reality, it's like you as a mom will know firsthand what your baby needs or doesn't need. And we were talking about preschools or whatever. Like I have schools that I'll also pay an arm and a leg for because I feel that she's well taken care of. And I can see that
Mm-hmm.
versus, you walk into a daycare and you're like, no,
Mm-hmm.
not
Yeah.
for me. And so like I'm developing that intuition, but my goal is really to teach my patients to do that
Yes.
because they have to heal.
Well,
They're the
so
ones that are going to heal.
that's a really good point. A lot of years ago, I would like to report that I didn't think my ego was involved, but it was.
Me too. I'm
And
always just like, I'm humble. I'm
look,
humble.
I really thought I was
Don't
kind
teach
of
me
like
anymore.
I said, yeah. And so, and how this came about was recognized that we were handling a lot of complex cases. And I was a bit flattered by that, to be honest. Like, look what we can manage here.
Totally. Yeah.
And I mean that takes
It is
something,
flattering
right?
though. It is like that.
Yeah.
That does show your expertise. Absolutely. There's
It's
no doubt about that.
right. And so, and I very quickly discovered something, which is when you have, this kind of onslaught of clients or patients who are saying things like you're the ninth person I've seen for this, or 13th person I've seen for this, or 27th person I have seen for this. And there's a little like, oh, and like you have this figured out and I was like, well, we don't treat, diagnose, and prescribe. This is what's testing. It makes sense to me based upon your symptoms, your life experience, your trauma, your blah, blah, blah. And this is what I suggest we do about it, but isn't like here's what we do, and then we just do that for 9 months. It's like it's gonna change, and um, what I discovered, we would just put them on their program, and within a few visits, they would be noisy and whiny and squeaky wheel. And I would be like, what's the deal? Right. And so this is where kind of that heart space muscle testing came from. This has been like about 2019. Is the way we were trained at the time was admittedly now I can see it. I was in a bit of a box. And it was like if somebody was experiencing their dog died or something, you just throw another mineral on their program or some sort of like emotional support. But
Sure.
when you do that 9 times and now they have 23 bottles on their program, like that just doesn't feel like
Hmm.
the
Well,
priority
now
is
you're overwhelmed. Yeah, the system is
totally.
overwhelmed.
And for me, there's what I can see happening is there's no resolve over there. And I kind of really like to resolve things because then you can circulate energy again, right? You can move on. And so I started just stepping out of the box and following and leading and letting my intuition, which is quite loud, have a say. She was like very loud. And I was just sort of like, no, 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 you're fine. And the more I gave her front row seat, the more literally, the more divinely guided I was, honestly. And I had a lot of practitioners on my table and they're like, what are you doing? How did you discover that? What just happened? You know? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm
I'm just
doing. I'm
present.
just
I'm
like
present with
right
this
here, right
person.
now with
Yeah, I'm
you.
letting the person tell me what they need. Yeah.
And the biggest component to those people who came in and we were like the umpteenth person, you know, who's going to now handle their care. Here is what I recognized is there was no responsibility taken on their part for their health. And they were looking to be truly fixed. Like, I don't fix anyone. I can walk alongside. I often call myself a cruise ship director, right? I'm like, I think I can see that iceberg. And so we're going to do what we can to get around that, make it smaller. Might be a little bump, you know, hopefully the barge doesn't crack in half. Like, we're I mean, just to be playful, honest, I was also like, you cannot laugh
For
about
sure.
this. You are not working with the right person. This is not going to work. But that was the biggest thing. And as soon as I started to, I could just see kind of the common denominator in those particular programs or those particular client cases. It was like, oh my gosh, someone has kind of enabled their story that they're like wearing across their, they might as well be wearing a t-shirt that says, you know,
I
MS
have
is my
immune
jam, you
disease.
know,
Yes. Yeah.
whatever it is. And I'm not just trying to throw shade on people. I'm just, it was just clear. It was just clear as day. Once I saw that for myself, that's where I ate my foot, the humble pie, right? And went, oh my God, this isn't even about that we handle the complex cases. This is that we can't handle the complex cases unless we cause them, enroll them into their own care, enroll them into being like the number one person to guide themselves through. They have to be willing to look at this stuff. They have to be willing. I'm not a mental health care pro. I'm not going to offer you counseling. I can offer you coaching. That's what I can do, right? And here's what
Yep.
I can bring to the table. And the minute I created that into kind of our, you know, report of findings consult and into this ongoing conversation about, hey, remember that? Remember how we said we were going to circle back around to that? It's time to circle back around to that. And so for this, I would love you to go see a yada yada for 2 or 3 sessions and then come back in. And they would do that and the needle would move. The needle
Yep.
would move, or they'd let me do some kind of energy
Yep.
work, something or other. And that was really what blew my mind. And that's what really that had me just kind of go like, you know what, I'm out of here. I don't need to do this anyone's certain way. And just giving myself that freedom. And then, you know, 2020 hit and just right before that, it was like late 18, early 19, is when we started using Cellcore products. I jumped on the Cellcore bandwagon in 2020, went to like 7 of their muscle testing workshops because I had nothing else to do. My practice was open full time and I was like, I want to go where the vibe is, you know, the rest of the world was shut down.
Yep.
I went and it's like I didn't necessarily learn something new about muscle testing, but you know, you'd have lunch with 3 other women and one of them would drop a nugget that I was like, that's the whole reason I'm here. Like that,
Yep.
what you
Yeah.
just
This whole
said.
this whole 5 minute conversation was worth it. Yeah.
Wow, I could go home now, you know? And so it was like surrounding
Hmm.
myself with the right people. That's what I mean, the community you keep in bringing intention to what that is. It grew me so much as a practitioner in those couple of years, such that um, when I don't even want to say the idea to go virtual, because again, it was already 75% virtual. And you might appreciate this. We were about to leave for an eco, and I had gotten really sick the year before. And I was still kind of in recovery mode. And I was in my sauna one day and I was like, all right, fall, here we come. Notoriously and historically, this has not gone well. right?
Yeah.
And I
Fall is,
literally
yeah.
was just like having a conversation with my nervous system, and I just was sort of like just lightly inquiring, is there anything else I need to know, about how I
Mhm.
can support myself? And just went into my quiet meditation, and I saw my practice logo show up. I kind of was like, get out of the way, I'm not here to talk to you. And it showed up again, and I pushed it out of the way 3 or 4 times. And then finally I was like, okay, what? Just like being frustrated with your teenagers. I was like, what? Do we need to have a conversation? And I saw the word virtual, kind of cracked up. I was like, well, we've been doing that. So I don't really get. And then it comes in like on a skateboard with like neon lights and exclamation points. I'm like, holy moly, like that virtual? Okay. And there was no hesitation, and there was no like, this is what happens to me with intuitive pings, because then there are no decisions for me to make. It's like it's happened, it's super divinely guided. And all I had to do then we went to eco, and
To
I was
figure
with
out
my
the hows.
my posse, my sisterhood, and I was like, you guys, I think it's time for me to make that move. And then the next week came home to my staff and was like, here's what I think we're going to do. And 2 days later, I walked in and they handed me an 8-page packet for like how we were going to break this down in the next 8 weeks.
Yep.
Like, you can't make that up. I could never have done that on my own, ever. We'd still be in that bricks and mortar practice right now. So that's what I mean. It's like really allowing yourself to listen as a practitioner, whether you're muscle testing or not. There really is, a force to be reckoned with out there, and
Yep.
I think an element of having our backs that we just take for granted every single day. And if we can remember to just truly tap in, have one ear open all the time, and use that discernment in the moment. Is this for me? Is this for them? Jot it down. You don't have to do anything with it. Jot it down literally. I'm the queen of post-it notes. And that was how we developed this. How do we teach this heart space muscle testing? What does this look like when we work in the space of the emotional, energetic? And how do we get people out of the pickles they're in right there in that moment on the table? And none of that had been really, I had taken, Psych K at that point, which I love. It's such a fun tool to use, and have since, delved into the MBSR tool, which has also been really phenomenal. But a lot of it was like, I got 30 seconds. What can I do right now that can just move this little, I call it the little layer of tissue paper out of the way that just gives us enough access to the little, you know, bee in the bonnet or whatever it is. And
The
that
little human
really,
inside.
right. So, and that's just like that's just really empowering when you really start to get yourself as a practitioner and give
I think
yourself
it's when you're first
space.
starting out, like you just have to listen to what other people are doing, right? Like you almost have to copy. And then the part where I'm realizing now, it's like I'm copying so then I can develop my own style versus I'm just
Sure.
gonna copy. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like,
Yep.
what is this person doing? How are they doing it? And then so on and so forth. Tell me,
Yeah.
do you have tips for like patients on how to find a great practitioner?
On how to
Because I
find a great
think
practitioner.
yeah, because I think that that's really difficult to do as well. And whether that's conventional or, holistic.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, the Google, right? Like that's kind of crazy, but we get so many people who are just like, we Google searched a parasite cleansing and we found you, or it gets just crazy to me. So it's a little bit, how well do you have yourself, SEO'd out there? But then also from like if you're thinking local,
Well,
you're
and I'm
you're
thinking, not even virtual, but I'm thinking like, how come it took 19 practitioners to
right.
get to the person that said, "Hey, when are you going to take responsibility for your health?"
Oh, for
And
sure.
so I find that it's actually very intuitive to find the practitioner and like for the patient to like listen for certain words.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I knew when I found my practitioner who like really changed the way that I am today and how I
Mm-hmm.
therefore practice,
Yeah.
it was like oh, this person is going to help me, but I
Mm-hmm.
had to go through a
Mm-hmm.
couple to get to that point. So I'm wondering if you have, tips to help people find those practitioners who are going to move the needle for them.
Well, I would say really listen to, not like listen to your friends and family from like a you should do this, but listen to them from their experience and watch to see if the experience that they say they're having is the experience that you've witnessed and observed, right? Because if that tracks, right, you might
Yeah,
be
when the
like,
person says, I feel
that's
amazing, but they're like, you haven't lost any weight, you're still tired, you're still
whatever
anxious.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I think not enough people put their eggs like in the coaching or life coaching basket, or even just a health coaching basket, because we really don't always have to work with this like big functional medicine doctor to get the same. I'm not a doctor. I mean, I don't, you know, and so depending on your state and your, whatnot. So I would think
Sure,
it's
yeah.
more about being clear. Here's the other thing. It's more about being clear about what is your intended outcome. Because I think we're all just like, well, I want to feel better. Okay, well, don't we all? But
What
that doesn't
specifically?
mean, yeah, that doesn't mean you're going to have to go to this big, nasty 9-month protocol, turn yourself inside out. Like, little, if at the end of the day you want to experience more joy and you want more restorative sleep and you want, a little more energy and to make better food choices, like that's a really beautiful. I always just, my clients, they have to create an intention. Once we've like sealed the deal and we're in relationship together, they have to create an intention that we are very specifically standing in, so that if things feel wonky or go awry, I can say like, so hey Jane, let's just revisit this for a second, because I actually think you've kind of maybe grown out of this part of it, and do we need to just remove that, or do we need to now plug and play something that it has you standing in the future fulfilled, not just like in the moment of
Yep.
running the rat race. And that seems to be gold. Like that's been a we've done that for a number of years, and it causes people to get out of their head of the experience that they're having in the moment. Now we want people to be present, but like the my headaches and my migraines and my period and my headaches and my migraine, like that's just like they're on the
Sure. It's on
hamster wheel.
replay.
Right, that redundant repetition, subconscious, blah, blah, blah. And so um, getting them to be present but how do you want to feel? I got that. I got that you're this and I got that you're that. But like, what next week? How would you like to feel next week or 3 months down the road? If they can't even wrap their brain around like
Sure. 3
3 months, we
years.
will talk about days. Anyway, so that I just think is such a good tidbit, and
Hmm.
and even more powerful, because truly um, the more people are in their head and stuck in that hamster wheel, the more junk is going to show up as noise in their muscle test, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And so for that new practitioner, you're like 27 vials tested and they're all a priority. And what do I do? And I don't know how to manage this. It's like you just don't know how to cut through the noise yet. And that's okay, because you'll learn that over
Yes.
time.
Yeah, yeah. Cutting through the noise. I mean, the appointments that you had for 3 hours that were supposed to be 45 minutes.
Seriously. Right.
We've all been there.
Yeah, for real.
Thank you, Nichole, for being here. Is there anything
Oh, for
else that you want to
sure.
share before I let you go?
Oh,
Where can we find you?
find
Find
me
you.
at myhealthybeginning.com.
Hmm.
We're on
And you're seeing a
Instagram,
lot
we're on
of
Facebook.
families. You see a lot of young families.
Yeah, I do.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's mama because of the kiddo, and it's determined that we should probably handle mom first, because that'll handle
Hmm.
50% of what the kid's dealing with a lot of times. Or, and sometimes we manage the child first. It just depends on the situation.
I wanted to specialize in pediatrics because I used to coach kids. And then I quickly realized that if I want to make a change in the child, I need to make a change in the family. And
Yeah.
then I was like, oh, I'll get them at pregnancy but it's like, well, it turns
There
out you
you
can't
go.
do much at pregnancy
Right, you
because that's
gotta.
when all the issues, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, it really does start before. And it's such a hard concept for people to understand. But it's like, no, no,
Yes.
if you're healthy, both you and
Hmm.
your partner, the chances of the whole thing going really well
So
are much,
different.
much greater.
Yeah.
And then literally the genetic blueprint is in that egg and the sperm and what you do
Right.
throughout the entire pregnancy. So, yeah,
Yeah. That's good work.
it's I mean, I think all of our holistic practitioners, that's why I try to, bring people on and just share what are you seeing? What are you doing in practice? How is it working? Because we are on the front lines and I do see a really big change in health. And I think all of us are. And it is alarming and it is hard for us to be the people are like, I don't want to come from this perspective as I told you so. It's more of
Right.
like, guys, we need to change something because I have children. I want to
Yeah.
leave the planet a better place. I want my children to have healthy friends and healthy partners
Yes.
when they're older.
Yes.
And it's like, that's literally what drives me to help people have healthy babies,
Hmm.
versus like, I'm
Hmm.
going to make more profit. Like,
Right.
well,
Right.
that's part of a business, but it's not
Sure.
the whole thing,
Sure. It's not your intention. Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Nichole, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.